Hey everybody, Winter here, and I'm going to go over in this video a couple of new play aids that I've came across and have started to incorporate, and some that I have kind of updated. So one thing that I've updated is I had these army marker uh, cards. They're little stands that have this exact same icon on them that you can put on the map, and then you take the units from that area, put it here, and then just kind of line them up across this so that that area doesn't become so crowded. And I've got these for each nation. These I actually downloaded off Historical Board Gaming. They had them up for free. I don't know if they're still there. If I can find them, I will put a link in the video. And if some of you recall from one of my earlier videos, I had these on a different type of block that was half as wide, and it was a lot thicker. And I switched over to these because one, that this isn't as big as it looks. In some ways, it's not much bigger than some of the zones. So I wanted to come up with a way of making a little more space. So these, they're like balsa wood. These I just bought at Walmart. I want to say they are 6 to a pack for about $3. They're in the crafting section. And then all I did was just, paint them the color I wanted them. I put a little, one kind of like dull coat over them for the side I was going to use, so it's not quite so shiny. And then I just took these off the ones I'd already had and glued them right onto this. And these have a lot more space to work with. They're a lot easier to carry around as well. The problem with the other ones is they were so thick. And so once you put them all together, it created this kind of like big brick. This is a much more compact way of transporting them. And it gives me more surface space, and they don't really take up much more space on the table. And so if you have a really crowded zone, like the Japanese starting Navy, I usually put on one of these, now it actually has space to all fit, where before this wasn't even enough by itself. So doubling the space gave me a lot more freedom with that. I'm sure I will use these or something similar to these in other games, other war games that can get a little crowded. But yeah, this is my updated version of these, and I think I'm going to be a lot happier with them in the long run. Another thing I came across Memo G's YouTube channel, and he made some just absolutely beautiful reference sheets for the game. And so I have downloaded them and decided to use them. And here's an example of, now I'd been looking to make a reference sheet that was like a master list of all the units on it, so that anybody could grab it and just look up a unit at any time. I didn't have to have a copy for each nation laminated and out there on the board cluttering it up. All you need is like 2 or 3 of these. Whoever the active players are, they're the only ones that really need them. And then somebody else can just kind of come by and pick them up. And if you got a lot of players, you print off a 4th one just so everybody's covered. So, but these are beautiful. These are absolutely, utterly beautiful. They're color-coded, they're bright, they're easy to see. All the keynotes are over here. Now, obviously, some of the units you'll need to look up the specific rules for, because there's just a lot of rules about them. If you look here at like submarines, he tried to kind of break it down, but it's submarines are just so complex anyway. They're just one of those things you got to look up. So I'm really happy with this. It talks about most of the rules that are relevant that you need to think about. It's got the specialty units, and then one other thing that's really nice about this is if you are looking to color code your units to make them a little bit easier to visually recognize right away, he actually has a color code scheme for you. So if you want to just go with this scheme, then that'll make things all that much simpler for you. And like, the popular ones are the naval units, because a lot of those ships look very similar. So here you go. He already has a scheme printed out on this sheet if you want to use it. And of course, if you don't, you can have your own scheme. But in that case, you might want to kind of, color over that or something if you still wanted to use something like this. But these are beautiful. I like that they're visually easy to see the numbers. Here's attack, here's defense, here's bombard in this case, here's movement, and here's the dollar signs. And they're all color coded. They all pop. You've got specific rules that you may need to think about over here. There are a couple pieces of information that I think I would have added to certain specific spaces that I think are relevant to that unit. But that's a minor gripe, and over time I might go ahead and make an addendum kind of thing to put here if it comes up. If I think that that's something, okay, we have to constantly look this up, so I need to get it on this sheet somehow. That's not that big of a deal. And that's the only other real complaint I have about the facilities one is there's a little bits of information with some of these facilities that I think should be on this sheet that are relevant. So in my case, I'm actually going to, this was just part of the air units. So I just printed it, put it on the back of the naval stuff. And in this instance, I'm probably going to use, for the most part, use my facility reference sheet more often than not, because there's a little bit, I made a couple extra notes and caveats down here that are important when you're trying to look this up, so you don't have to go into the book and look up the specific rules. I try to get as much of that, or if not all of it, transferred to this reference sheet, even the very specific exceptions and caveats that you need to know about that particular facility or unit, whatever the case may be. And then what I did is I took one of the cards, quick reference cards from HBG, and I just put it on the back of the land unit sheet. And part of this, the reason I really wanted this here is now I'm pretty good at remembering the order, so it's not that huge of a deal to me. But it does have the convoy rating chart, which I wanted on here at the very least. And then it's also got a quick reference chart for bombards. And then if you really need this, now in my case, I might take these two charts, pull them off, and create another sheet to replace this one at some point. I don't know yet. We'll just wait and see how that works out. But I'm very happy with these, and I'll put a link in the description below. Now, he has a lot more than just that, though. He has basically what are consolidated reference sheets for each nation. And these are really, really, really beautiful. Really beautiful. Now, this didn't print out quite right, so it's a little faded. I'm not going to use these, and I'll explain why. But these are beautiful. These are absolutely beautiful. The main reason I'm not going to use these is because I don't have a lot of extra table space than what I already do for these to be used up, and there's a reason for that. Because if you look at these, these are your bonus income. And the great thing about these is if you have the space to put this down, and as you're playing Japan, you can just go, oh, well, okay, I took Hong Kong this turn. Okay, I get an IPP for that. And I also have Borneo, so I get 2 IPPs for that. And you can just quickly look at it and go, okay, well, 3. I get 3 bonus IPPs. Really, really, really awesome. And then it's also got the U.S. oil trade tracker here, so you can keep track of that as you lose your oil income from the U.S. when you become aggressive. It's also got a kamikaze tracker for much the same reason. You can kind of just track how many kamikazes you have left. And then it breaks down the specific rules for this nation into these different categories. These are generally combat. These are kind of other things. And then it also lists any special units that that nation has. In this case, the Special Naval Landing Force that the Japanese have. So pretty much, now what I did with that is I made a build chart for each and every nation in the game. And actually, let me grab one of them real quick. And I found that it was easier to keep track of multi-turn builds on a card like this. This is the exact same balsa wood thing that I used for these. I made this up in the program GIMP, and I just made it look as nice as I could. But what I did for in this case was, so not only are you keeping track of your units that you're building per turn and moving them down the build track, but I also made a reference block up here for the special units that this nation has access to. So in this case, Germany has access to SS Panzer Grenadiers, and they have access to Tiger 1Es. The one thing I forgot to put on this was that I at one point on the British one, or not the British one, the Russian one, I do have a little block here for the, what are they called? Nationalist, basically, if they win the Spanish Civil War, they get a free infantry per turn in Moscow. And so I made a box for that, for them, so they can keep track. They build all their normal stuff, and then they take 1 infantry and put it on that box. I did the same thing for colonial infantry with the nations that can build colonial infantry, so that they can remember that they're colonial infantry and they get placed differently than regular infantry just in case it's a turn, you know, it's one of those turns where things get a little messy or they have to stop before they can, and put the stop for that week and they can't finish their turn out. They can come back and go, okay, well, oh, that's right, I built 2 colonial infantry. I would have built that, or I would have forgotten that without that box. But I do need the blue division box here for the Germans. I know I've updated this, I just haven't printed out a new one for it. So this is where I opted to put the special unit references. And of course, if you have the space on a magnet board, you can just put this up on a magnet board, which is even better, because then you can put all this out and keep the magnetized chips on it. And then anybody can look at it real quick and just look up at the board and go, oh yeah, he's got plenty of income from this and that coming in. So these are really nice sheets. He's made one for each nation. Just an option out there if you really like them. I like them. I'm just not going to use them as of right now. I might change that in the future. So, like I said before, it was Memo G, and I'm going to put a link to his YouTube account in the description below. Then I went through and I double checked some of the ones that I had made. Now, obviously, mine are a little more sparse. His ability and time to make them look that good is really impressive. Now, I could probably do something similar with enough time on my hands because I'm fairly familiar with GIMP, but I went with a much more utilitarian. I wanted to make it as utilitarian as possible, and then I did what I could to make it look a little more visually appealing, which obviously fell a lot short, but it's still serviceable. And I also wanted to make sure that all kind of relevant data was on these sheets as possible. So on this sheet, what I did was I updated it a little bit. I've got the order of play up here and all the various nations. I tried to break down the turn steps into very specific things that you would do during that step. And what I did is the black is in the base game, and anything that is in blue, it would come from an expansion. And this way, if you're playing with a bunch of expansions, you can just kind of, go through your turn, take time, and if you're and it's very easy to forget this stuff. So this is why I like to have stuff like this. Just go, okay, well, we're not playing with the Spanish Civil War. We're not playing with, okay, we are playing with Latin America at war. So roll for random event, start of each year. Okay, not this turn. Germany may establish a spy network. That's Latin America at war. U.S. counter-espionage rules, Latin America at war. And then production, peacetime income, diplomacy, tech, air repair, or repair damaged units of facilities, purchase new units, lend-lease. So this is like a check-off list for somebody who finds it very easy to forget all the things that happen within a particular phase. Similar with all the other phases. I broke them down, and then again down here in the place units phase, partisans, commanders, and minority at war markers. So anything that is in an expansion that happens in one of these specific phases, I tried to put down here. And then over here I have the alignment rules for all the various nations. Quick and dirty, just right out of the cut and paste, right out of the rule book. And then on the back, I did all the terrain. So you can just look up all the terrain real quick. There's a generalized terrain, which will apply to almost all of these. And then here's the specific one for use first combat round when crossing a terrain border and on all combat rounds in a terrain territory. No blitz across any enemy mountain, desert, jungle, or marsh borders, or into that terrain. Movement reduced to 1. And then if you're going into mountains, you come down here, all attacking land units have -1. All this would apply. And then you come down here to deserts, all attacking land units have -1. Vehicle class units that roll a 12 in combat are forced to retreat. And this goes all the way down. And then a few things that I added specifically besides just the combat modifiers was I wanted to add narrow crossings, channel ports, straits, channels, things like that. And the Burma Road, strategic rail amounts. So I added all that to this. This is the chart right out of the rule book. Same thing here. I just, highlighted it, cut it, paste, using GIMP. I explained canals and straits. I also went ahead and put supply path and lend-lease on this because that's so tied to terrain. And it's something that I don't want to keep on having to look up to make sure I understand it, but there it is. So that's my kind of like general order of play go-to reference sheet that I use. Then the other ones that I'm still going to use is the tech. I know Historical Board Games has one on their website. The only reason I don't use that one is because this one is more condensed to one page, and I prefer that. So on the front, it's right out of the rules. It's how all the tech works, all their points, what you need to roll above it. Here's the unit stats. So I try to put all that information right here on this sheet. And then this is my facility sheet on the back. So major, medium, minor factories right across, major, minor ports, shipyards, seaplanes, so on and so forth. And then a couple of the oddball ones down here like fortifications, coastal artillery, airbase, railroads, so on and so forth. And again, this one's a little more utilitarian, I feel, than the other one that Memo G did, although his obviously looks nicer. And then this is just the Vichy reference sheet because, you know, it comes up so often. And then this is also a sheet that I went through and I updated it to make sure everything was up to date with the wording. And this is all of the Allies' victory conditions. And this is all of the Axis and the Comintern victory conditions. And this sheet is for anybody to grab and use, so that everybody in the game at any moment can just grab this and know what their opponent's victory conditions are or their own victory conditions, rather than having to pull out the rule book or go online and look up look up Germany's chart because you're playing America, you don't have access to that, and he's using it right now. Just grab this. So I like to keep a couple copies of this around the table. And then for the same logic, I like to have Allied wartime bonuses and Axis wartime bonus income. Just so, again, everybody on both sides at any moment can just pick this up and go, okay, well, here's what, okay, Germany's going to get that and that. Is there any way I can take that from him? Not this turn, but maybe next turn. Italy, okay, you know what? I'm going to try to take Gibraltar back because I don't want him to get that. But you know what's going on. And then I did, just to include some of the expansions where it's relevant, I included Canada, and then I also included Turkey on both sides because they obviously swing both ways. And then I just put Allied, and I included the USSR and CCP on the Allied sheet just for simplicity's sake. So these are really useful, I find, for quick referencing stuff. I might make a sheet similar to this, or a cross between this and the Memo G sheet where Japan could put out and keep track of its IPP bonuses on like a checkoff list, and put that on the magnet board. I might do something like that. I'm not sure yet. I would try to make it look as nice as this, but obviously he would probably blow me out of the water. But I like that idea. It also helps everybody kind of keep track of what's going on at a quick glance, not to mention the player who's actually playing that nation. And sometimes, particularly with Japan, it's easy. There's quite a few that they can get. So it's easy to kind of forget what you do and don't have, what you haven't gotten yet. So a checkoff list like this might be, would actually probably be a pretty good idea, at least for Japan, if not some of the other nations. So yeah, those are just some quick play aids that I've added to the game recently, and I found I'm going to put any link to anything that I think is useful that other people might want to use and play with in the description below. And if anybody wants to make any comments about any kind of play aids that they found that work really well, I'd be more than happy to hear it. I love finding ways of helping the game run smoother. Wintermute out.